All right, thanks for joining everybody. We're going to start in just a couple of minutes here, so just hang tight as everyone kind of gets online from their last calls, and we'll get started shortly. Thank you so much. All right, without any further waiting, we'll get going here. Still got plenty more people to show up, but a lot of people have showed up, so I don't want to keep you all waiting. So thank you for joining us today. Windows, Mac, and Linux patched to perfection. That is, in fact, Bacon Unlimited's love language. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Patching is a key focus for Bacon Unlimited. And so we're going to be doing a few things today. We're going to give the general overview of the product. We're going to talk about enhancements, though, as well. So you're going to actually see a demo of patching in depth in addition to our normal overview. But the other things we're going to do is we're going to close at the end by talking about new additional things we're going to be able to be doing in security and patching, or security-related patching and scheduling, some other things. So some really fun things to talk about today. We're super excited about it. And we are preparing for a very exciting RSA. For those of you who attend the security conference in San Francisco in May, we will be there with a booth, and we will be showing a lot of new cool things related to security related workflows and making your life easier as IT people are dealing. So let's get started with the easy stuff. Dave, if you wouldn't mind putting up the slide for our introductions here. This is who's going to be presenting today. I'm the one on the left there. I'm John Marcato, co-founder and CTO of Bacon Unlimited. And joining me today is Dave Adekoya. He's one of our senior engineers, and as I always like to reflect, my favorite demo guy. So thanks for joining me, Dave.
As always, thanks for having me.
You bet. Couple things that we like to get out of the way, housekeeping-wise. Dave's going to flip the slide there and just talk a little bit. I'll talk a little bit about one. If you've never been on GoToWebinar before, you can ask questions in there. There's a little section for that in the little pop-up that you have on your right of your screen. Please do ask them. We will answer them throughout in the background. Some will also talk about it. They have to be relevant to what we're on at the moment. And in addition, at the very end, we're going to be doing a survey and giving away t-shirts to people who fill it out, because the t-shirt is super soft, and we are very grateful to those of you who fill it out. We want to get better and better webinars. We want to make sure that people are getting the information that they're looking for in trying to solve their endpoint management woes. And that is what Bacon was made to do. So hopefully we can translate to that to you well during this call. We'll also be launching a couple of polls just to get a little gauge of some of your interests. Please participate. We do appreciate it. All right, so moving on from there, we also have Bacon Bits, which is our YouTube channel. Bacon Bits are little videos that can be used to train yourself on Bacon, or just to maybe get a little more familiarized with certain features if you're determining whether or not you want to try out Bacon. And so that can be really handy. And it's just easy. Just go to YouTube and search for Bacon Unlimited, and you'll certainly find our Bacon Bits up there. And there is 110 plus. We update them weekly. So with that, I think we're probably out of the housekeeping part, and we'll get on to polls. So Lane, who's in the background, is going to launch our polls for us. Why don't we start with the first one? All right. What operating systems do you support? Mac, iOS, Windows, and Linux. We do support all of those, and we'd like to know how focused each of you are in those areas. 100% of you so far using Windows, but a good mix, 30 to 40% of the others. See how that turns out. Oh, we've got 4% who don't.
There's a lot of Linux in there. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Good stuff.
All right. So as you can see, Windows is usually sort of the dominant player there, but a pretty good mix of other stuff. So we'll be talking about those operating systems as well. And then let's do the second poll. On a scale of 1 to 5, how important is patch management in your organization? I'm hoping this is pretty high, just considering the nature of the webinar, but maybe some people are just here to see the overview of all the other features, and that is certainly fine as well. We've actually got some people that it's not as important. Got 12%, 15%, 14% that say it's a 1, and 11% that say it's a 3. 4 and a 5 seems to be dominating the case there, and that does not surprise me, especially in this day and age. All the vulnerabilities that are fixed by patching, and I think productivity things too. Just there's a lot going on in people's devices these days, so patching drivers or patching the operating system's ability to do functional things is also important. So, all right, so that one's going to wrap here. Yeah, so we did end up having 25% of people did not do a 4 or a 5, but rather either a 1 or a 2 or a 3 there. A little bit more than that, 28%. And 36% in the 4 and 36% in the 5. So about 3/4 of you are really, really focused on patching, and that's great. For those of you who aren't, well, you're going to learn about all the features we do today, but also some patching. So we're going to break into kind of why people use Bacon and why we built it and what it does for you. And I'm going to cover that, and then I'm going to hand it off to Dave to jump into the demo. And he's going to demo, he does the quick overview, and then he's going to actually demo deeply into patching. So and that's what we're going to get around to here. All right, so Bacon is a modern solution for endpoint management, right? And its intention is to become more and more complete with everything we can think of and to continuously evolve. So Bacon is younger than some of the other tools on the market. A lot of the tools in the endpoint management space have been around for 20+ years, or their code base has, and they've been renamed, rebranded. But ultimately, they have some of the artifacts of older code that make them a little bit less effective, or might do some things that you find a little peculiar. And we wanted to get away from all that, so that's why we designed a new tool. It is a very modern platform, so it's a container-based, and it uses React JavaScript on the front end, Python Django, things like MySQL for our caching database. So it's a very flexible application. It's very fast to develop it and improve upon it. But when you're using it, we want you to focus in sort of 3 areas, or we focus in three areas that we like to talk about, and that's visibility, control, and automation. So they're in that order for a reason, because essentially what we found in the past was it was very hard with a lot of tools to get real-time information about machines, especially if they weren't sitting in one central network. So that's not how a lot of people will work anymore. There's a lot of hybrid work out there, people working from home, people working on the road, and it's really important that we can still control all of their devices, that we can keep them working correctly, that we can keep them secure. And so that's what Bacon's is all about. And so visibility is the first part. We need to make sure that we have real-time information about those systems. That means every piece of inventory, piece of software changes, we need to know about it now, not in 2 hours or 2 days or something, but in 15 seconds or less. And so that's a key part of Bacon. The other part of visibility is really about monitoring and knowing if something is wrong, so you can proactively support systems and really know if you've got maybe a security risk problem, like your antivirus service dies, or a machine didn't get encrypted for some reason, and they're all supposed to be encrypted. These are things you can do with Bacon just in the visibility part of it. So let's just assume you've got this great visibility. What that enables you to then do is to make really good decisions in controlling those machines. So that control could be a remote control, which we have a really beautiful HTML5 WebSocket-based way of remoting into systems from sort of multiple layers. So you can do the screen or the CLI or the disk system directly. And then control sort of extends to all of the jobs that you can run against machines. So you can run patching jobs and install software, even very complicated multi-file software. And you can set every setting that's available on any of these endpoints remotely and in a way that is reliably kept in compliance. In other words, you can set a setting and know that it's staying set that way and be alerted if it's not the way you wanted it to be. So all of that is really, really important, but you can't have good control if you don't have good visibility. And then lastly, you can't have automation if you don't have control. So you can only automate what you can control. And at Bacon, we know that if you can automate things, you can create tremendous amounts of value. You can make IT people's jobs a lot easier, and you can ensure consistent and reliable outcomes for the staff that's using all of these systems. And that means staying secure and staying productive. When it comes right down to it, when you work in IT, the goal is to keep your people productive and secure. And if you can do that effectively, you're really, really winning, especially at the game of endpoint management. So let's talk a little bit more in depth on the next slide here, Dave, about kind of the main sort of key points. So we're security first, we're cross-platform, so we have almost 100% feature parity. Sometimes we'll make a feature that comes out for, say, Windows first, but it usually is quickly followed by parity in other operating systems. Sometimes it comes out for Linux first, and on occasion there's something that only applies to one OS, and that's okay too. But for the most part, you've got really good feature parity across the cross-platform space there. We do support 8 common flavors of Linux that are used in the business world, plus macOS, plus Windows, and we support iOS in an MDM function. macOS we actually support in a cross method, which is an MDM methodology and an endpoint agent methodology at the same time to be able to cover every capability that's possible in macOS. So Bacon was designed to have a very intuitive interface. It's not a bunch of different pieces of software that got bought by some big private equity company and jammed together. It is one cohesive, thought-out piece of software, which is why it's very easy to use. Most people say they were able to learn, 80 or 90% of it just by clicking around without ever having to refer to the manual. Although the manual is electronically built right into the software, you can view it there, or you can use our new AI-based chat BLT feature. Chat BLT is a GPT AI. It has its own training in it, so its own vector database, and therefore it knows specifically about Bacon and Bacon-related things. But you can also use it to write you scripts and make these very interesting profile states for you, and it's a really effective way to learn the product. It knows the whole admin guide inside and out, so that's built right in there, and Dave can show that off possibly as well. So ChatBLT is new, and it's going to be an ever-expanding universe from here on, being able to use AI to do a great many things, but it's just in its first rendition, so recently released. In addition, you'll be able to do things like patch and install packages and control all of these settings and get monitoring information, and then when you need to remote control the system. And we think that in each of these areas, we have some very good advantages to enable you to be very, very effective in your environment. So that's kind of what Bacon is all about. And we're always looking for new ideas and ways to make endpoint management easier. We are a bunch of IT people that decided that this tool needed to be made and got together with a bunch of programming people, and we work on this stuff around the clock in real environments, and then code the needed features into the software and collaborate with a lot of our customers on their ideas. And so far, we feel that we've made the product that has the greatest future and already is providing just huge amounts of value for customers today. So with that, Dave, I think we're set up to go. If you want to give us the overview, and then jump into some deep patching, and then I'll round it out at the end by talking about some of the new features, explaining what's coming once we've gotten all these folks warmed up with what we've got so far.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, so let me go ahead and switch over to our Bacon screen. And I've been seeing in the questions side of things that GoToWebinar may not be updating properly for everybody. So if you don't currently see our overview page, you may have to drop and rejoin. I'll kind of talk slow to give you some time. Yeah, no surprise, gave me a little bit of grief when we started as well. So we'll let people kind of catch up there. But while they're reconnecting, so what we're looking at here is the overview page. And what we're going to do is we're going to cover the different widgets on here. And then as we go through the different features in this like high level overview, we're going to go through the nav bar on the left-hand side and kind of walk our way down. I'm going to skip over patching first and then kind of give us some time to focus on it. And then, like John said, we'll follow up with some upcoming features. So getting started here, let's look at alerts first. So in Bacon, we can set up alerts. This is generated by the agent side, right? So it's agents monitoring machines and then giving us those alerts. And these can be for things like performance indicators for high CPU utilization, high hard drive utilization, memory util, that kind of thing, as well as monitoring services or if machines are online and offline. And then also we have these profile alerts. How these work is, as John was saying, we want all of our configurations to be reliable. And so with Bacon, you're able to set a configuration and then have the system check to make sure that config's in place. If not, it will fix that. And then you also have the option of getting an alert if it found a config wasn't in place and had to like remediate that or fix that issue. And so that's what we're seeing here is our profile configurations can give us alerts. So it can be something like, hey, we realized that your firewall's not configured on these servers. We fixed it, but you did ask for alerts, so it'll send you an email. Next up, we have endpoints. Very simple. So which endpoints are online versus offline? Our UI tends to be pretty interactive, so we're actually able to click on any of these two, graphs or any of these other ones here to drill down into where we're getting that data from. So if I click on this connected, it'll bring me to the endpoints table and it'll filter for connected endpoints. Next up, we have distribution. So what operating systems are we running? We are cross-platform, so we support Windows, macOS, iOS as well, and also business-grade Linux. So that's going to be things like Debian, Ubuntu, Red Hat, CentOS, Rocky Alma, I believe Amazon Linux as well. Next up, we see patches. This will show us how many patches or packages we have available to push to our machines. So here I have, let's say, 25 jobs that can be split up between all of my Windows machines for patching. That could be like maybe everybody needs one patch or there's a lot of different patches for one machine, but we'll kind of see that as we go into the patching side of things. Next up, we have antivirus protection. This allows you to set your AV and it will track that for you. So how this works is we allow you to set the service or services that you're using, and then it will contribute to this protected counter here. The reason why we do it is because we're not going to know what you're using better than you will. So rather than trying to keep up with a list of AV and their current service names, it's much easier to have you as an admin go in, select your services, and they can be any services, even like Principal, or if you want, the system is flexible, and then mark those as AV so that we can track if they're on machines and if it's currently running. Then lastly, another security focus here, we have encrypted hard drives. And this shows you which of your machines have encrypted drives versus those that do not. And we're supporting Windows BitLocker and macOS File Vault for right now, with Lux encryption coming soon for Linux-based operating systems. So with that, let's go ahead and move over to monitoring. So like I mentioned, we're able to monitor both different rules that you configure. So things like, is a machine online, are services running? Also things like patch count, so how many patches they have available, or patch age, how old is the oldest patch. And then once these are triggered, they go over to alerts. Now, when you get an alert, we can either email it out. So we can email any number of addresses. That could be your ticketing system. If you're using Jira or Autotask, we have direct API integration there. So we're able to actually create and then close tickets whenever the alert is raised and resolved. Here we can see our alerts table, and we're able to go through here and dismiss any alerts as need be. Next, we can see outages. So rather than having your team ignore things, you want to set up an outage. You can set this up by either group or by individual endpoints so that you're not needlessly triggering alerts and making a bunch of tickets. Then lastly, we have a knock dashboard. So this shows you just a visual indicator of the health of your environment with different colors depending on what's wrong. It could be maybe you have a lot of patches available or you've triggered a critical alert. Maybe your machine's offline like this one here. With that, let's move over to the endpoints table. So here we're going to see a lot of different data points that we're pulling back in Bacon. Every time I do this, there's always more to kind of show people. It used to be just one column here, and I have to keep scrolling. But some ones to highlight are going to be things like your host name, your OS platforms, you can see here, OS version, IP address. If we have multiple, it'll be comma separated. We can see the current user, how many patches they have available, your current, not current, but your OEM serial number. So, your Dell service tags, HP serial numbers, all that kind of good stuff is in here as well. And so what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and start filtering. And I want to do a filter for my Windows machines. And I add one more just to catch everyone who's online. And so we can combine filters along with our quick search, which will look through all the columns together and pull up different machines. In this case, I'm looking for anybody logged in by Bacon admin. So now I can select my machine and can I show you the individual endpoint detail page. So here we have 8 different tiles up top, and as we click these, it's going to change the context of what we see below. We also have a remote control, which we're going to cover. But let's start with system. So let me scroll down here. And here we're going to see very similar data to what we saw in the endpoints table. However, there is a little bit more details. Now we can see CPU model. We can see your current RAM versus your capacity total. We can also see things like how old this data is. So this was refreshed at 1419. My local time would be EST. So I can see if this machine's data is old, just to kind of keep it in mind as I look at stuff. Maybe I just installed something or pushed something out. On the right-hand side here, we can see performance information. So CPU utilization, RAM utilization, excuse me, as well as any kind of tags here. So these are ones that you can create in the UI, or you can select from ones that have already been created. Down here we have notes, and so the tags and notes I set here are the same ones that your coworkers will see when they're in the system as well. And keep in mind, tags can also be searched for on the previous endpoints table and filtered by as well. Next up, for disk information. In this case, we're on Windows. We have drive labels. We can see our C drive here at 90%. And if I had any kind of encryption, there'd be a little lock icon above the C, little green lock up there. On the right-hand side, we can see recovery keys. So Bacon is able to escrow those encryption keys for you. So in the case for you, so that we're always up to date and you can pull this as an administrator. Next up, let's take a look at the network side. So we can see what kind of network interfaces you have available: IPv4 address, IPv6 address, and MAC address. Now over on policies, I don't have any applied to this machine, but this is where we would see those profiles applied. So things like my baseline firewall configuration, or setting up software for like a initial device provision, that kind of thing. All those will be listed here so you know what kind of automation is in effect on the machine. Over in groups, we have both static and dynamic groups. What this means is static groups are what you're going to think. You as an admin will make a group, add some machines to it, and it'll stay that way until you change it manually. Dynamic groups use those filters we saw on the table before, and as machines meet that criteria, they'll be added to the group or removed from the group if they don't meet it. And you can use these groups to assign monitors, to push out software, do patching, and assign profiles as well. Lastly, for MDM, doesn't apply to Windows, but on macOS, if we had any MDM style profiles, those would be listed here for our macOS and our iOS devices. Over on software, I can see what's currently installed. Pretty simple. One nice thing to note here is we also have a column of number of endpoints. This shows you how many machines have that same software and version on here. So I know like my backend agent is 10 machines have this exact version on here. And if I was to click on this, I can also see which machines those are. If you look in the top right, I also have an option for uninstall, which is a quick way to just uninstall this from different machines. I'm going to skip for available patches right now. We're going to cover patching in just a moment. But just keep in mind that the same steps we do to patch multiple endpoints also apply to one endpoint as well. We try to reuse menus as much as possible so you can learn a single way to do things, not have to keep learning different screens of the product. Now, over in services, we're able to see what's currently running on the machine. We have the option of starting and stopping, as well as mark as antivirus, as I mentioned earlier. So here, if I filter my services table for is antivirus, I can actually see that I've marked Windows Defender's antivirus. And so once it's marked for one machine, it'll then mark it for everybody. So it's pretty easy to come in here, find a machine that you know has AV, mark it, and then as you add more computers to the system, it'll automatically pick that up. Then lastly, we have logs. So everything done in Bacon is logged somewhere. User actions are logged somewhere, and then the actual actions the system does are logged here. So you can see that my coworker Adam was pushing some things out. I was doing some uninstalls on this machine, and John pushed out some patches. And so it's very easy to see what's been going on with the machine from Bacon's standpoint, and you can audit these as well, which we'll look at in a little bit. Then to kind of round this off here with the endpoint side, let's look at the remote. So I have a screen remote built into Bacon. This is all in the browser. So on the endpoint, there's an actual installed client, but for me, I just use the browser. Super simple. You're able to log in here with multiple coworkers as well, so you can have multiple people logged into this screen view. And it's exactly what you think. You can interact with admin windows, of course. The user has a way of closing our session, and they get a little pop-up saying we've connected. We even have some features like locking out the user controls if you're doing something sensitive, or opening up a chat with the user even before you connect to make sure you're able to get connected. Over in the shell side of things, it is my favorite one in the remote, as I always tell people. So the shell is a fully featured shell. It's actually rendered in the browser. So I'm going to open up PowerShell here, and you're able to keep a consistent session. So if I set a variable and then pull back the result here, you'll see it's not just sending a command to the machine and then giving us the response back. It's actually keeping the shell open and letting us interact with it. And as you can see here, everything can be copy and pasted because it's actually in the browser. And so it's pretty simple just to copy text, anything like that in here. Nice thing as well is this runs a system, so you're unlikely to run into any issues with permissions. You also have the option too in the shell of connecting as the current user if you want to run things as them, like maybe mapping a network drive. Then over in the file system view, very similar, we're able to interact with the backend file system as the system account. So here I'm able to go through and then download files or upload files quite simply with a left click, and it pulls it into your browser like so. Alrighty, so next up, we already looked at the groups, but this is how you see the groups in the system. So pretty simple, it's how you can manage them, edit them, what have you. Over on the software side, it's gonna look very similar to what we saw before, where we're looking at the software for all machines now. The filters work the same exact way, search works the same exact way. If I type in like Chrome here, I'll be able to pull up Google Chrome on, in this case, looks like Debian is the only one that has Google Chrome running right now. But you kind of get the idea here. With different software, it's pretty simple to search for. Also, this little cloud icon is kind of neat. So for the applications that are in our third-party patching repository, we'll be able to tell if they're up to date or if they need to be updated and kind of give you an alert here, as well as we can set alerts in the monitoring section as well. Again, we'll cover that in just a little bit. For services, very similar. So here we can see all the services on the machine, and I'm able to also filter and see what AV has been configured for all of the devices. So in this case, we have one thing here on Ubuntu that's definitely not AV, but it does show the flexibility that you can pick any kind of service or daemon and mark it as AV here. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the good parts. So let's go for patching. So we're going to go over to available patches, and because Windows was our most represented operating system, and I think one most of us do understand pretty well, I want to filter my platform here for Windows. But keep in mind, when it comes to different platforms, the same steps I'm taking here are the same ones you would take to update packages in Debian or push updates to like your macOS endpoints. You can actually even do cross-platform updates and like push 2 Debian packages, a macOS update, and then 18 Windows patches, and Bacon will figure out which machines you need to go to. So looking here, we've pulled up our patching menu. How patching works in Bacon is we query the machine for what patches they see available, and then we build this table for you. What's really important for us is that we're using the OEM approved methods. In this case, in the case of Windows, we're using the Windows Update agent and going that route rather than reinventing the wheel. What that means is we get a very seamless experience, and we can tell you everything the machine sees. And if I click here, you can see what I mean. So we have the name of the patch, the current KB number, and the current GUID. This is kind of important if you have multiple locales. Let's say if you've got like English and French, then the name of the patch might be different, but this GUID will stay the same. I can also see the categories that have been assigned, the description, and if it does or does not require reboot. And then lastly, I'll see the machines that have that patch available to install. So let's go ahead and take a look at what patch installation looks like. I'm going to go back to this table, and I'm going to grab a couple of these. Let's grab one of these, some of those, and two of these. Now, keep in mind, whenever I'm doing things in Bacon, if I want to interact with a single object, I'll use this actions button in line. If I want to do it for multiple or some kind of table action, it's this one up top. And so I'll do this to install 5 patches. So here we'll see the patch that I've selected. So 3 of these need a reboot, 2 of these do not. That'll become important in just a moment. Next up, I'm going to see the machines that need at least one of these patches. So even if I had 30 Windows machines, I may only see 9 because the other 30 don't need one of the patches I've selected. So here I'll pick one that's offline, one that's online, and my France VM. Why not? Then next we get to execution time. So we have install immediately. What that means is that it's going to push the patch out and it's going to install in whatever state the machines are in. So here I selected my demo in10 machine, which is currently offline. So install immediately is just going to basically bounce off of this one. It's going to give it to a machine up top and the machine in the bottom, but this demo in10 is not going to get it. Maybe that's what you want for a job execution. You want to push it out right now, and then maybe you only want to do it for users you can currently support, not queue it up. I tend to actually prefer to queue it up. So for that, I would use run when connected. This allows me to push it out to everyone who's available right now. Again, the one on the top, one on the bottom. Then for this demo in10, the job's going to queue in the system for them until they check in again. In this case, the machine comes back online. Then they'll get that patch deployment. For me, when they get the patch isn't super crucial. It's that they got the patch that I'm concerned about. So that's my go-to option. As far as scheduling goes, we can also schedule a time. How this works is we can pick a time and a date to install. Pretty simple here. And this is going to run local to the machine's time. So I chose my France VM for a reason. If I'm going to install this at 1600 or 1630, that's going to be 1630 for me in Eastern time. That's going to be 1630 for this VM over in France. So it'll do it local to the machine. So you can hit, let's say, everybody at the end of the day and give them some patches before they turn the machines off or what have you. Then nextly, we have relentless mode. And John, I know you'll explain this one. Would you mind kind of giving us a brief overview here?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So relentless mode is a feature that allows you to have a little bit more control over the patching experience, and also it creates a lot of automation value as well. So a long time ago, it's been 3.5+ years, one of our current clients was a prospect at the time, and they said, I like the way the patching works. It looks easy, but I kind of need not just a scheduled time, but a scheduled end time, because we get approved from management to patch and reboot during a certain window, and I need to do that. And I said, that's such a good idea. I should have thought of it, but we'll put that in there. And thanks for bringing it up. But they mentioned another part of it too, and this is actually sort of the relentless part. They said, the way we patch today with whatever system they had then, if you reboot, then any patches you ran that didn't get included before the reboot happened, you have to start over. You have to run another job manually. I thought about that. I was like, that doesn't make any sense. So what relentless mode does is it doesn't just give you this clear window where you can have a defined start and end time down to the second. You have real complete control over that. It also allows you, if you leave that sort of default mode on there where it says yes, reboot endpoint if the patches require it, that basically means that the patching system will automatically put all the right patches together, install them, reboot. The job will continue if there are more patches to do. It will do the same thing again until you either run out of time, or if all the patches you've selected have been installed. So it's a great way to get caught up on patching. One of the things that a lot of Bacon customers appreciate is the first week they have this, they run relentless mode against everything, and they're 100% caught up. So that's the reason and sort of the history of relentless mode, and people have been using it really successfully ever since, including ourselves. So we always like to make sure we highlight it. I use it mostly on servers, but you can use it with any systems that you like, and it's pretty handy. So there you go, Dave.
Awesome, I appreciate it. Yeah, it's really handy for especially catching up patches. I found that whenever we kind of deploy to new environments, people first get Bacon, it definitely gets utilized just to catch up all the servers that haven't been patched up. just simply because the tools that you had didn't work or you didn't have those tools yet. So it definitely has a lot of utility, even in like brand new environments or new installations. All right, continuing on, let's take a look at patch history. So in Bacon, what we're doing here is we're actually capturing all the patches that have been installed on a machine as soon as you guys get the agent installed, and let me keep track of that. What this allows you to do is have an easily searchable table here of who has what patch, when they got it, and all that kind of information. So what I want to do here is right now we're looking at patches available. This is something that can be exported, as most tables in Bacon can, by going to actions and export. And so it's super simple to make a pivot table here and kind of plan out how to do your patching, because you'll be able to see who needs what patch and what that patch is. Now, if I use my filter and I filter for patches that are not currently available, available just means like it's available to install. So we would have seen it in this available menu over here. But if I want to look for things that aren't available, then I can see the history patches. So here I can see what patches have been installed. I can also see historical. So in Windows, they do have a patch history option, but the kind of problem I have with that is that we're not able to copy and paste with it. And more importantly, the values in there change depending on if a patch supersedes another one. I might still need to look at that initial KB and like kind of look for it and see, did you break my network interface this time? Do I want to reinstall these? What have you? And so this allows me to do that in a very simple fashion where you can see all the patches we've installed on this Windows 10 machine. And so I can see things like installed. We know what that means. If we scroll to the right, we can see the date it was installed and how long it actually took to get installed. Pretty simple. Historical means that it used to show up in the system, but it no longer does. So this patch was probably superseded by a newer one, but I still have that information, still have that KB available in here for me to reference if I need to, right? And then we also have unavailable. This means the patch was advertised this machine, but we didn't see that it was actually ever installed. And again, it's probably superseded by a newer patch. It's no longer being advertised this machine for something to install. And again, this is cross-platform, so we'll see that for Linux and macOS as well, because again, ultimately we want to keep track of patching and make it easy to make those reports for you. Next, on the reporting side, we have compliance. So this is kind of like a 1,000-mile view here. We're just looking back at the entire environment and saying, all right, just generally, how patched are my machines? So we have a compliance score here, which is looking at which patches you have installed versus those you do not have installed and generating a percentage, right? So pretty simple. And again, this can be exported just like most tables. So we've covered OS patching, right? But we also want to get into third-party patching, things that aren't available in those patching repositories. Now, for Linux, you guys are lucky. You've got a great package manager, so things are going to be available there. But on the Windows side, it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So let's take a look at our repository. We've recently come out with a feature called Manage Packages. And what this allows us to do is we can maintain this repository of software. And we're tracking the software name, the current version, where to download it, as well as also giving it a quick virus scan before we provide that link to your server. On your side, you can then choose to manage this package. And what that's going to do is it's going to have your server check in with our service and make sure you always have the latest version of this software downloaded to your server. So this 7-zip exe here is actually in my file repository. If I go over to files, and these are files that you could have uploaded manually. But if I look for 7-zip, yeah, 7-zip never really works one. Let's see, zip. You can find it in here. I'll try a different one. Let's see. What I'm trying to get at here is we have packages that are managed. So let me filter this table really quick and see if we can find them that way. There we go. So 7-zip. Not sure why it's not pulling up the search there, but this is what we're looking for. What happens is Bacon's going to keep downloading this package to the server. And it's also marked as managed. This is how you know that this package will automatically update. So if you're running any kind of automation, you can always still rely on this individual GUID. There's like a whole system we have here, so you can actually copy this link and dynamically push this out in your states and your profiles over here. And so we're tracking this for you, and it'll keep it up to date. So that's kind of step one is, can we give you the most up-to-date version of the software? Step two is, well, how do we install it? That's great, but this is the good part, right? Is let's actually get it installed or updated. For that, we realize that writing states is something that you can kind of become accustomed to. I write a ton, but they're not always the most intuitive to get kind of working out of the box. And we want to fix that. That's what the software is here for, is to make things easier. So we also have this option to create a state. This is Bacon's version of automation. So what will happen is you'll manage a package, and then you'll go here and say create state. And this is going to make a state for you to push out to your machines to install or update that application. So the one for Google Chrome here is going to download Google Chrome to the machine from our repository on this server. and then it's going to install or update to the latest version of Google Chrome. Nice thing too is with web browsers, you don't have to worry about like the application closing out or anything like that. It's going to do it in the background. Then once the user closes and reopens it, they'll get the latest version. So for software that's not available in our repository, there's two options you have. If it's publicly available, we always accept requests. We're happy to add stuff to this list. We've even done some out of just like demos we've given people just to kind of prove that it's pretty simple to do and pretty easy to track. We also have an option where you can create your own local packages. So in this case, you are going to be responsible for finding where to download it from and also keeping the version up to date. But you can still utilize the same system of very easily downloading it to my machine, adding my install or uninstall arguments, and then pushing it out, right? Very simple. For everything else, though, we still have our files and bundles repository. How this works is we can upload files to this file repo here, which we looked at a little bit ago. Let's say if we wanted to find like an MSI of some sort. And then the super old Firefox is a good example. We can then deploy this to our machines. So in the case of this Firefox MSI, I want to put it on a Windows machine. We don't try to really interpret what you're doing with the file type. That way it can be flexible. And we can launch it. So it'll run it, and then we can install like so. We can pick some machines. This is where it's going to be dropped in the machine. It'll make the folders. Then we can install a system or as a specific user and add any necessary install flags. So we still have the option to do manual installs where necessary or where required. Over in the bundles feature here, this is what we use for installing multi-file installers. So let's say if I want to do an Office 365 install, I think most Windows admins are pretty familiar with this, where you can have your executable, your configuration XML, and then we included a script as well to call everything. So it'll call my executable, add the config XML as an argument, and then give me some rich output just saying, hey, this worked or hey, this didn't work, right? So we have a lot of flexibility here for just running scripts, executables, or even just dropping files like config files on machines. You can do that and target a directory very simply or upload font files to machines. So it's got a lot of options there for you. Kind of rounding this off here, over in the profiles and states, this is something I usually cover in my demos. I'm happy to do like one-on-one stuff. But the general thing here is this is how we can actually push out different configurations like registry key changes or configuring local group policy. We can use it to install software. This is a very reliable way to push out those configs. As John was saying, it's all about making sure that you can audit if your configs are working so you can depend on the system. So in the case of like, let's say if I had a baseline compliance profile, I used this in a previous webinar, I can push out very simple configs like disabling a Bluetooth service, disabling removable drive access via USB, pushing out firewall profiles, and making a login notice, which is just like a local GPO I can use to set the login notice whenever you log into a machine. And then this can be pushed out in a profile to a group, and then Bacon can audit those configurations over in the logs. Now, I want to leave enough time for John to kind of go with the new features, but you can kind of see here as we push things out, you're able to see what was successful, what wasn't successful, and what actually is never going to be successful because there are no machines that's being pushed to anymore. So hopefully this gives you a little bit of an overview as to what we have available in Bacon. There's still a lot more I could cover, but unfortunately we only have an hour with you guys, so this is as much as I can get done so far. John, anything you think I left out or anything you want to cover before we move over to the new features?
No, I think that was a good overview, and certainly if you didn't see everything you wanted today, you can hit our YouTube channel or you can set up a demo with us, and we'd be very happy to answer all of your questions and make sure you know exactly what you need to know to make the best decision for your organization. And with that, why don't we bring up the slide, Dave, and just kind of go over the very exciting coming features that we have here, some of which will be showing on next month's and the following month's webinars. So some really exciting stuff. As I mentioned, we'll be at RSA in May, and so hopefully some of you on this call will be there, and we'll come by the booth and love to show you what we're up to. We'll be releasing some really exciting stuff. So the first thing, the first two items there are related items. So the patch approval workflow and the recurring scheduled patching, they really go together. So people often ask, I see that you guys can schedule patches, but could I set a reoccurring schedule for certain groups of machines? And so in our first thinking around patching that we've had for the last many years, we kind of felt like if you have to go through and approve them anyways, you might as well just run the job and then schedule it for when you need it and maybe do relentless mode and so forth. But I was convinced over time that really in this last year that there would be some very good reasons where people would want to do more of the traditional patch approval workflow. And so in this workflow, let's say you've got 35 different groups of computers. You may not want to go and run those jobs. Even only takes 30 seconds to probably go and set each of those up. It's still a bunch of time that you'd like to perhaps automate. And yet you don't want to use traditional automatic patching from Microsoft because there's a lot of limitations in what you can control there. So with Bacon's new scheduled patching capability coming here in the next couple of months, you will be able to set up schedules. There's virtually no limit to how many schedules, and apply them to any group of machines. And so during those schedules, it will effectively do any approved patches. So in the patch approval part, you'll be able to choose if there's any categories and severities of patches that you want to auto-approve, or you can just manually select them in the actions menu you saw while Dave was demoing, and just choose to approve them, and they'll have a column that shows that they are either approved or not yet approved, or permanently denied. And so if you do approve those patches, and you've got these this example that I gave of having 35 different groups of computers, that's a real example from a potential customer. And so I thought his example was a very good one, in that if you have these 35 schedules, which you set up one time, maybe your biggest group of things happens on every Saturday night. Maybe you have another group that happens once a month. Maybe you have a group that happens the third Thursday at 9 p.m. and the second Tuesday at 8 p.m. It doesn't matter. You'll have full schedule control there in terms of how it looks, similar to scheduling something in Outlook or something like that on a recurring schedule. And there's some additional interesting parts to it too. So in addition to how it will, or when it will patch, and the fact that it will patch approved patches, you'll have the ability to say whether or not the schedule will do reboots and other things like that. So, and it will have everything that Relentless Mode has. In other words, not just a start time, but an end time as well. So pretty cool all the way around. And kind of tied to it, it's actually sort of built into the same feature, something called job chaining. And job chaining, it's not only for patches, but it was dreamed up in this idea of patching, where sometimes there are things in your environment that you need to preset to make sure that a patch job is going to be successful. So the example that I really like giving is maybe you need to turn off your SQL service on your SQL server before you patch it, and then turn that SQL service back on when it's completed patching. So in a job chain, you'd be able to say the step one is disable, or not disable, but let's just say stop the SQL service on your group of machines that has the SQL servers in it, let's say. And then you can actually set with a checkbox whether or not it has to succeed in order to move on to step two. So let's assume for some reason the SQL service can't stop. The job will just fail, and it won't move on to patching because you don't want it to patch unless the SQL service stops. And then thirdly, after the patches run and that part complete, you want it to turn back on. But in this case, you wouldn't check the checkbox for depending on success, because whether or not the patching job succeeds or fails, you still want that SQL service to turn back on at the end. So that would be a simple job chain. Now, the neat thing about job chaining is it doesn't only have to apply to patching. So you could do all sorts of tasks that do one thing after another and have either dependency or non-dependency on the success. And so you could, be installing software and say, I want to close Chrome before I install it. Now, in the case of Google Chrome, as an example, if you're doing an upgrade there or something, it generally, on the standard install with the enterprise version, it won't install if it's open. It won't just close somebody's web sessions and do that. But in this case, if you wanted to force that, you could, and you could do that with job chaining. So job chaining is going to be a really neat addition to our already built-in capabilities. Now, to be direct, we can actually sort of already do this with our profiles feature, but it is a little bit more complex. And job chaining is going to make it very, very simple to do that. And that's what we're always doing in Bacon. We want to give you the flexibility when you need to do something complex to give you that capability. That's a big differentiator with Bacon to a lot of our competitors. But we also want to take things that are commonly done, and we want to take that complexity and make it simple, so that all the things you do commonly become very easy, or it can be loaded down to somebody at a level, maybe a lower level on the help desk or something like that. So it doesn't have to always be that one person who knows everything kind of doing all these tasks. You should be able to delegate, and Bacon is really set up to do that, not just because of making the technical simplicity, but also because of role-based access control, which is very, very well built out. And the last feature I want to talk about is actually two features, and these will be showing in great depth at RSA, but we'll also be showing them in upcoming webinars, probably in April, it looks like. And the first one is a vulnerability management capability that is 3 phases long, and it utilizes public databases of vulnerabilities, and NIST primarily. And essentially what it can do is allow you, first and foremost, to be able to see what vulnerabilities exist on your machine that would be related to your particular version of operating system or to your third-party software that's installed on any of your endpoints. So you'll have this, multiple views where you can see what vulnerabilities you currently have. But while there's other software that does that today, some antivirus products do it, and so on and so forth, one of the complaints that we've heard a lot of people about those tools is that, okay, well, they tell me I have vulnerabilities, but they don't actually help me do anything about it. And that's actually what's important. In fact, there's 2 important steps after just knowing about them. So step 1 is know what vulnerabilities you have. Step 2, though, is mitigate those in a way that's easy. So just in how it's easy to install patches or do third-party patching, as Dave showed, we're going to map those to the vulnerabilities on each of your machines. So you'll be able to see all those in a table, select them all and say mitigate, and where that mitigation is a patch installation, it will do that as a job, and where that mitigation is an upgrade from, say, Google Chrome 119, which was actually found to have a pretty major vulnerability in it recently, it will upgrade you to the next level up, which was the solution. It was 120, something that solved it. So these kinds of mitigations need to be done all the time, and it's really important to be able to do them quickly and to keep your machine in the least vulnerable state possible. And so we wanted to do that. But there is one more step that's really important in this, and that is the reporting step, or attestation as it's called, for those of you out there who have to do attestation for compliance with certain security regulations, or with maybe with your customers, or maybe with your the board of directors even, and it states that all of the details on how you dealt with these vulnerabilities. So sort of summary views and detailed views of, okay, we found out that these vulnerabilities existed on our systems at this time. We patched them or mitigated at this time, and this was the time between those. And we can now see that they are all mitigated, and there are no active machines in our environment that have unmitigated vulnerabilities, right? So that's the kind of stuff that people need as part of their workflow. And the tools that kind of are out there that do that today are quite expensive and really cumbersome to use. And we wanted to make it really, really simple to do that. So that vulnerability feature and all these others that you see here come with Bacon at no additional cost, just like we've always done. But there is another vulnerability management feature that we're adding that is similar, but it's part of an integration, and it's part of an integration with Tenable Nessus. So if you're currently a Tenable customer, which is the #1 vulnerability scanner on the marketplace that has about 60% market share, you'll want to know about this second vulnerability management feature. With API keys, there'll be a nice easy wizard to integrate with your existing Tenable Nessus environment, and we will be collecting the vulnerability information in addition to what we get from NIST from there, and we will have mitigation paths. Now, what's the advantage to this? If you're not using Nessus today and you don't know about this, the great thing about Nessus is how thorough it is in finding vulnerabilities, whether those are related to a particular piece of installed software that can be patched or upgraded, or whether it requires an integration, or sorry, not an integration, but rather a mitigation that is not related to installing software. Sometimes it's just changing a registry key or a config file or a firewall rule, And what we want to do, because we can control all those things in Bacon, we want to publish those fixes directly and stream those down. So people who are using Tenable have made a very big commitment into learning about the vulnerabilities in their environment. And so Tenable becomes the seer and Bacon becomes its doer. And that is one we're really, really excited about. We've used Tenable internally for a very long time. It does a great job helping us stay secure. I certainly don't mind promoting their tool. It's been very effective for us. But it is meant to be a seer and not a doer, right? It tells you what you've got and it tells you what the fix is, but it doesn't do any of the fixing. So Bacon's going to take over that role of doing the fixing. So all of that you see will all be out by RSA. We're excited to be showing it off. And we wanted to tell you about it today just so you know what was coming. With that, we're pretty much going to be wrapped up here. Please do fill out our survey. I see there's one more question in here. Vulnerability, is that the same as running a continuous vulnerability scan against your network? I don't know that continuous is a fair term, but I would say think of it as in the case of our NIST integration, we're going to always be looking at what software you have, and if it matches the CPE list, which is how software is classified by NIST, and that CPE has a CVE, yes, it's fair to say that within minutes of a vulnerability being known about any software you have, you will see that showing up in your Bacon server, and you can set up alerts in the monitoring system in Bacon to even like email you and stuff like that to let you know, hey, there's a new vulnerability in Bacon, you got to go do something about it, and it will allow you to be extremely proactive about getting that. And Bacon is not an acronym for something, it's just that everything is better with Bacon, and we really fell in love with the name early on in a very lighthearted way. There's a little bit longer story to it, but we don't have time for it now. Excuse me. So that's kind of all there is to that. If you guys have any more questions, people will be following up with you, and we'd be very happy to talk to you more about everything. And with that, thank you again for filling out the survey. We're going to end the webinar and look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.